What if success wasn't measured in dollars, but in impact? In lives changed, communities built, and purpose lived out every single day. Welcome to In It for the Honey. I'm Sarah Munoz, and this is the podcast for entrepreneurs who do what they do for more than the money. Today I'm talking with Jon Irwin. What if the key to fueling Canada's innovation ecosystem isn't just money, but the people who know how to unlock it? In this episode, I sit down with Jon Irwin, a funding and investment expert who has helped entrepreneurs secure millions in grants, tax credits, and government incentives. Jon started his career solving technical puzzles, but over time, he realized his real gift wasn't just in coding or in systems. It was in empowering founders to bring world-changing ideas to life. We explore how Jon went from a corporate problem solver to a catalyst for innovation, why he's so committed to helping entrepreneurs succeed, and what keeps him going through the complex, often frustrating world of funding. If you're an impact-driven entrepreneur, or if you've ever wondered how to access the capital that could transform your business, this conversation is for you. You'll hear what Jon actually does and why it matters for Canada's innovation landscape, the spark that led him into funding and incentives, how he built his unconventional path in tech, leadership, and investment, the mindset that fuels his resilience and purpose, his best advice for anyone looking to secure grants, tax credits, or growth funding, and how to connect with Jon and who his ideal clients are. Hi, Jon, and welcome to In It for the Honey. So happy to have you.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Excited to be here.
Really excited to have you too. Thanks for taking the time. Tell us a little bit about what you do. I understand that when founders come to you, what problem are they usually trying to solve? And how do you help them move from a great idea to a funded reality?
Yeah. That's a great question. My job is or what I do, and what I love to do is help find funding, non-dilutive funding for startups, for small, medium-sized enterprises, founder-led companies, things like that. What non-dilutive means is funding where you don't have to give up any equity, where it's not a high interest loan. It's either a grant where the cost share is 50-50, or it's a low interest or zero interest loan, or it's a tax credit. And this helps companies, especially tech companies, with their burn rates. It helps them to develop further without having to go after maybe a Series A round of funding too early. It gives them a little bit more leverage, gives them a little bit more autonomy and freedom to do what they want. And the one caveat to all of this is that sometimes I have to play the part of the bad guy. And what I mean by that is there is a minimum barrier to entry for a lot of funding, over 50,000 from the government, and they have to be incorporated in Canada for at least 2 years. They have to have at least $100,000 in revenue, and they have to have at least one employee on payroll who's not a founder. And so that eliminates a lot of startups. And I hope that changes with the government. I hope that they recognize that there are a lot of startups who don't meet that minimum and who desperately need some funding. But as of right now, that's not the case. It's sad, but if you think about it, where government isn't too risk averse, it does make sense. There's a disconnect right now between what a startup is and what the government thinks a startup is. And hopefully that changes. But yeah, that's kind of my role, and that's what I love doing. I love it because I always get to talk with these founders they're like sponges. And so every time that I'm talking, they're enthralled, they're listening, and they're absorbing everything. And it's great. And that's the kind of people I like working with. I'll be honest, I don't like working with people who are dismissive, who don't really have time, who don't really care, who are, you know
Hmm.
what I mean, like that. So I like to make an impact. And if I can make an impact by disseminating information, then great. If I can make an impact by helping them get funding, then great. But I like making that impact, if that makes sense.
It does completely. It's interesting you refer to yourself as the bad guy, like the deliverer of bad news. If anything, I don't think a lot of founders understand what some of the barriers of entry are, right?
No.
As a Canadian, familiar with how our government likes to present information, it isn't always clear. And what you just said is clear, even though we might not like that information if
Yeah.
we're just starting things out. And does it happen where you'll share that information and with a founder, and that founder says, "Okay, great, thanks, Jon." and comes back to you when they meet those barriers of entry?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I'm not the best at following up a year or two later, but there are founders that are, which is great. So, and I should caveat a little bit. There is one program that founders can take advantage of before 1 year, and that's the SR&ED, which is SHRED, the tax credit program. And we don't have to get into details about it, but it's for research and it's Canada's research and development tax credit. That one you can eligible regardless of revenue. You just need to have expenses. So, um, but yeah, what I do offer to anyone that I meet with that's not eligible, and a lot of them do take me up on it, is or is not eligible at the time, is use me as kind of like a sounding board or as an advisor kind of thing going forward, especially those that I know or that you just working in this ecosystem, you kind of know the ones that have that success kind of you can feel that they're driven, if that makes sense. And so regardless of whether or not that is the case, I always offer to be an advisor. So if they come across a funding program that they're interested in, I encourage them to send it to me and I can give them my 2 cents, because it probably is quicker for me to do that than for them to spend the time. So sometimes if they're not eligible, I'll I'll like we'll schedule a follow up in 6 months if they want to, or a lot of them will reach out and ask questions along the way and different things like that. But for the most part, for these founder companies, they're at least a year, if not 2 years away from accessing grants. So it's a long journey for them. And it would be nice if there was a bridge to help them get to that point, because there are a lot of great companies, great founders with great ideas that just need a little bit just to make it over that hump, if that makes sense, to their MVP or to their proof of concept or to a version one or to something, right? So it would be nice to have something.
It sounds like you're acting as that bridge for now, though.
I'm trying. I mean the ones that are less than 2 years old. It'd be
Okay.
nice to have a bridge for those ones. I do. So there are resources online that I point them to as well, because I'm not the type of person that is salesy. That is like, okay, now that I've given you this information, sign with me. Um, I don't do that. I give the information. If there is something that they want to pursue and they want to sign with me, then great. But if not, if they want to do it on their own or they want to sign with someone else, I'm fine with that too. Because I've got the mentality where I want to work with people that want to work with me.
Mm.
And if it means that I have to do a bunch of webinars where people just take the information and do it themselves, that's okay with me, because I like disseminating that information. Yeah, I know it's a different approach, because a lot of people would be like, well, you should be pushing, you should be following up with every single person and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, I'm not that person. I don't pay for ads. A lot of my clients come organically, and I like it like that. I'm probably
It's
not as aggressive or not making as much money as I probably could, but I'm happy with that. I'm okay with that.
you end up working with the people you enjoy and the people that
Yeah.
enjoy working with you.
Yeah, like I've turned away people because of certain things that they've suggested in contracts, or certain things that just they're shady and things like that. Not everyone is like that, but I like I can be choosy at this point, and I don't want to come across as elitist or anything like that. It's just I want to work with people that share similar values, if that makes sense.
It totally does. I mean, why else would you have left your career, right, to do this if you didn't get to choose who you got to work with? So let's
Yeah.
get into that.
Yeah.
You didn't actually start out in funding. You started out solving technical problems. So, what was the moment you realized your real leverage was in helping people access the resources to build world changing, Canada changing ideas?
So it's funny because it it I'll kind of explain my career as opportunities being presented to me and me jumping on those opportunities and saying yes. And so the first opportunity, so I graduated, and then I didn't want to sit behind a desk writing code my whole life. So I started working at the keg, and it was great. I love it. I honestly would go back and work as a server again. To this day, I love it. It's a
What
cult,
did you
I'll admit it.
graduate in? Sorry, you said
So
you
I took
graduated. What
computer
did you
science,
graduate
and then
in?
I also went to college after that. And then I have two diplomas, one in electronics engineering and one in computer control. While I was in college, that's where I really got a lot of experience as far as networking, because my first year, because I was involved with leadership development for high school students, we would have the conference at the college. And so I knew the student union at the college. And so my first year, I applied because the vice president position was open. So I applied. I got the vice president position. After that, I became president. Then I ran again for president of the student union. That was a phenomenal experience. I think that's where I learned a lot of my diplomacy skills and working with people, because I had to work with the union, I had to work with the teachers, and work with the government. So I learned a lot about working with the government at that point, which didn't know at the time would be very helpful going forward. And so, yeah, so once it was a 3-year course. It took me 5 years or 6 years, no, 5 years, because of, I took a year or two off because of president, and I just went part-time for student union stuff. So that was a phenomenal experience. And I highly encourage anyone who goes to school, either university or college. I didn't get involved in university, just in college, but highly encourage anyone who goes, get involved with your student union. It'll help you feel connected. It'll help you feel welcome, and it's a phenomenal experience. So yeah, that was, yeah. So I graduated, and I did apply for a couple of jobs, and there is a career path that I kind of regret not getting into, and that's programmable logic controllers, which is, how your lights go from red to green to yellow and all that sort of stuff, like traffic lights. That's what those are, programmable logic controllers that control that. I loved it. I loved the course, but it is something I regret not pursuing. But there weren't any opportunities at the time, because I grew up in Thunder Bay, for those that don't know. And so we have a university and a college. We have Lakehead University and Confederation College. So there were a few opportunities once I graduated. One was working for NAV Canada. There was a sales job that I didn't get, which I kind of, if I had, I think I would have done really well. It was like industrial sales, which was interesting. But anyways, worked at the keg. And then after the keg, I did some radio sales. And then after that, I was the Red Bull rep in Thunder Bay. Then I got into a big car accident.
Oh no.
And I lost my deltoid muscle on my left side. Like, it was a whole shebang. But I had a really good friend who I'd made who, while I was recovering, he's like, why don't we start a consulting firm? Because he was connected with some of the First Nations, because there's a lot of First Nations communities in Thunder Bay and North. So we started solving problems together. So he had the connections, I had the tech background. So we would do training for these First Nations. We would create programs for them. We would deploy their networks. We would troubleshoot their networks. I got to fly up many times to a First Nation called Kaseshwan. It was funny because we go up there, we'd install a solution, and then once we land, we hear that they destroyed the solution, so we'd have to go back a few days later. But from that opportunity, there was a company called Telos, and shout out to Justin Frape. I do have to thoroughly thank him for taking a chance on me and my company. He hired me to deploy an instance of Microsoft Dynamics. It's a CRM software, for those that don't know. And so I deployed it, and he's like, what do you know about Shred, which is Canada's R&D tax credit program? And I said, like shredding documents? Which is what everyone says. He's like, no, it's this. And he goes on to what it is, R&D tax credit, and there's a technical and financial. He's like, would you want to give it a shot? And again, another opportunity presented. And I said, yes. And so that ended up turning into what my career is now. And just to kind of talk through that. So Telos was a boutique shred firm. There are lots of boutique shred firms. Mine is a boutique government funding firm, which handles everything. But so we merged with BDO. And then again, BDO was like, hey, you're bilingual. Do you want to go to Montreal for a month and help them out? And I said, yes, again. So they moved me to Montreal for a month. I think it ended up being 2 months. And they're like, hey, you're our only kind of IT consultant. We're launching our R&D practice in Ireland. Do you want to go help us launch it? And I said, yes. So Ireland, and over the course of 3 years, I was there for about 1.5 years in total. And then they moved me all over the country, Winnipeg, and then I ended up in the GTA. But yeah, and now GTA is kind of where I stayed now. But yeah, actually I was in Montreal for 2 years before I ended up moving back to the GTA. So, but yeah, and now from BDO, I went to another boutique firm called Benefact. Then from there, and all these opportunities, not that I'm anyone special, but because I'm a software engineer doing shred, it's a very niche kind of position. And so I was always being headhunted and all that. So when I was at BDO, I got headhunted by Benefactor. When I was at Benefactor, I got headhunted by PwC. And then from PwC, I got a great opportunity at Leighton, being their director of the Toronto office, kind of launching the Toronto office. They had one office in Montreal and launched it in Toronto. And along with their sales director, we grew that from 2 people to 100 people in just over a year. But it was a lot of
That's
sales people.
incredible.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a lot of salespeople, a lot of technical people, but it was a great experience. And then from there, PwC, Deloitte, PwC, Leighton, then Deloitte, and then Deloitte was my last foray into the corporate world, where I got burnt out multiple times. I got to a point where I just they actually I got laid off. But it was eye opening for me. So they hired me, and then a year and a half later, laid me off along with the other people. But it was eye opening, and I'm like, you know what? I have at the time I think I had 13 years experience. I'm like, why am I doing this for other people? I can do everything from start to finish. I like, why am I like, there were other positions that were open at the time and that I had applied for, and I had job offers, and I was like, no, I'm doing this on my own. So 3 years later, almost, where I'm doing my own thing and I absolutely love it.
Amazing. Do you mind if we scratch that a little bit more, that corporate
Yeah.
experience you had that
Yes.
essentially either burnt you out or changed your mind or was eye-opening, as you said? Because I think there's a number of entrepreneurs that do find themselves in the corporate world, but
Mhm.
it's comfortable, and leaving it can be scary, but staying can also kill your soul. Burnt out, like you said, multiple times,
Mhm.
and then was laid off. It sounds like it was a blessing in disguise, but while you're living it, it sounds like it was pretty horrible.
Yeah. It's so I didn't know that it was horrible at the time. And I bet you a lot of founders and a lot of startups and a lot of these people who are in the corporate world, they don't realize how toxic it is until you're actually out. I've never, because of and I'm open about this, but I have ADHD. I was diagnosed 20 years ago, and it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle. Less of a daily struggle now with the supplement protocol that I'm on. But in the corporate world, ADHD is, at least for me, it was difficult because I would see people who shouldn't have been promoted be promoted because of politics. The people who should have been promoted don't get promoted. I see people on top of me making decisions that I can see that are going to be detrimental in the long run. I would ask too many questions. I was a people pleaser, so I'd always want to say yes to everything, and that's why I got burnt out. So I would take on too much, and then my work would suffer because of it as well. And I never learned my lesson. I kept saying yes, and I always would say no. And I would say no for a bit, and I'd go start saying yes again. But back to kind of the eye opener is I needed that to happen. I needed to leave Deloitte to happen for me to, without something else lined up. That was the first time in 13 years that I didn't have something else lined up, or at least something in the works, talking with someone else. And so I needed that to happen at that time for me to have an epiphany on, you know what, I can do this on my own. I might have to take a hit for a few months or a year, which it's about a year and a half, but eventually I'll be making, should be hopefully, more than what I was, and I'm more autonomous and I've got more decisions. But it was so scary. It was scary but exciting at the same time, because it was, even though it's crazy, because even though I work with entrepreneurs, even though I help them with I go through their trial balances, their GLs, their finances, like I know how it works. It was just because I hadn't done it myself, it was scary. And this was before AI was really big. So like I had to figure everything out on my own. Luckily, I had a good support network of people and people I connected with. So I built, even though I was in these corporate positions, and this is one thing for founders, is regardless of what company I was at, I would always focus on my personal brand. So if I was at Deloitte, it'd be Jon Irwin from Deloitte. And so it would always be Jon Irwin. And so I was able to build that personal brand, which really helped with me transitioning to having my own firm and working with people. It's been, but yeah, you need to kind of be pushed off the ledge before you realize that. And again, corporate works for a lot of people, but For some that are comfortable, like you said, you probably won't leave until you're pushed off the ledge or until maybe you get a funding round or something, but it's got to be something big that happens. It's not just going to happen. Some people will just wake up and be like, I can't do this anymore. But for most of us, we need that swift kick. We need that one thing, that one big event that's going to be life changing.
You mentioned that ADHD impacted you negatively in your corporate experience. How is it impacting you now that you're your own boss?
So I'll tell you this, the one thing that, and sorry to all of my previous bosses and previous companies, but it wasn't my reputation really on the line with clients when I was in the corporate world. And I knew that in my head with my ADHD, which is not a good thing to know, to be aware of. So like I was doing good work, but and it also I wasn't on a supplement protocol or anything at the time. So throughout my whole life I would always procrastinate, leave things to the last minute. I'd still get them done, but get them done at the last minute. And so it wasn't directly my reputation on the line. Sometimes yes, because like, oh John, you wrote this, so whatever. Now everything is on me. And so um I'm always I'm extra cautious now because it's my livelihood, it's my reputation. It directly impacts any revenue. It directly impacts a lot of things. And so that was a big change for me when it comes to that. When it all like the other thing is I get to make my own decisions now, which before I couldn't. I was always told you have to do this, or you have to do it this way, or that way. And that would frustrate me. But now I have control over all of that, which is, we talked about it earlier, deciding which clients to go with and which clients not to go with. And I'll be honest, like at the time that this was happening, like I probably should have signed those clients, but I'm glad I didn't, if that makes sense. So I'm glad that so in my 16 years of doing this, my focus has always been to my clients regardless of the company I was at. Like the clients come first. They're the ones who are paying us and all that sort of stuff. And so now that's all I report to is my clients, which is the part that I loved. And so I took out the part that I don't like, and now I'm just focusing on the part that I do like.
It sounds like those triggers, a lot of the triggers that would trigger the negative sides to the ADHD, because there's positives to it too,
Yeah.
right? You were able to eliminate those and focus just on what you love. You've mentioned it a few times. So for the listeners that have heard John mention he's on a supplement
Oh,
program,
yes.
can we tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I should caveat it by I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a naturopath, but I've done research on there's a gene mutation called the MTHFR that affects a lot of ADHD people. And so that's where I kind of started with my supplement research is what do I need to take if I have that gene mutation? And there's 6 other ones that affect it. It's called the methylated gene test that you can take. But from there, just it kind of expanded out. So big shout out to TikTok, to be honest. I know a lot of people doom scroll on TikTok, and I do that too. But the amount of stuff the amount of stuff that I learn, not only on ADHD, but my symptoms, other people with ADHD, and the supplement protocol has been phenomenal. Like this morning, just sidebar because ADHD, I learned the easiest way to represent quantum mechanics in mathematical equations. So, like, I'm not random, but it was super interesting to me. But that's where I learned everything about my supplement protocol journey. And so I take about 20 different pills a day, but it is night and day from not supplementing to supplementing. Whereas I'm calmer, I'm on top of things. When I get an email, I'll read it right away before I wouldn't for some reason. And if I don't respond to it right away, I'll leave it as unread and reply to it later. Tasks are like I keep the house clean. I'm daily cleaning where I never used to be go like a week before. Like I do every now and then, but I'm always cleaning. For someone with ADHD who was not on the supplement protocol, taking out the garbage is equatable to writing the SATs. Like that's how difficult that task can be because of the executive functioning, the lack of executive functioning. And so on this supplement protocol, it's just like everything gets done. Like I shovel right away. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And so on this supplement protocol, which includes like, it's all natural. So it's vitamin D3, K2, omega-3, SAM-E, TMG, I said omega-3, L-tyrosine. There's a whole bunch. It's been an actual game changer for me.
That's amazing. I'm sure there's quite a few listeners, founders, people in the corporate world who will hear this and say, "Do you know what? I'm going to do some research myself."
And I'm happy to share it with anyone that's interested. So you can find me and I'll share. I've got a spreadsheet that I've put together because so many people have asked me. And so, and I've even
That's
linked it
excellent.
to where the bottles that I bought off Amazon. Not that I get a referral or anything. I just to make it easy for people.
That's wonderful. What, like, you're always looking to add value in everything you do, John.
Yeah.
That
I
really
always
speaks
like
to
to
who
help.
you are. Well, getting onto that, so you have helped a number of entrepreneurs and
Mhm.
you've helped them secure millions in funding. When you look at the work that you're doing now and the kind of impact that you've had, is there something that comes to mind, one or two examples of impact that you're most proud of?
Good question. I wouldn't say this is one that not that I would say the most proud of, but one that I enjoy the most is being a mentor for the Toronto Business Development Center. The reason being is because of the people that I get to talk to. And these are all people who are come from abroad for the most part and are looking to succeed in Canada. And they really, really want to succeed in Canada. And so just connecting with them, like the amount of questions, my last session that I had to actually be cut off, and that was the first time it ever had to be cut off because there were so many questions, and there's so good questions. There's this one company, I don't wanna mention her name, but we got her some funding to help her with her drink business, and it helped her with her marketing. I don't know if this is directly related, but she's now in Loblaws, and so I'm so happy for her. She's a phenomenal lady. She's got a phenomenal company, but just it's the ones where the founders are so appreciative, if that makes sense. And I don't expect founders to be appreciative. Like I don't expect them to go above and beyond and all that sort of stuff. I just because I can notice the impact, right? And so I know when they've gotten the funding, when they reach out, it's so awesome getting that email from them. But I would say those are the two. One is yeah, I like where I can make the biggest impact, if that makes sense.
Of course, it
Yeah.
does, and I think a lot of the work that you're doing is very impactful. You're translating what the government puts on the website that nobody can really understand, and it's like there's money sitting in a cloud that no one can access, and a bunch of people at the bottom that need it, that'll put it to work, but they just can't get it to rain. You help them make it rain. You're like a
Yeah.
rainmaker.
And not so the part that I haven't touched on is and I've kind of touched on it, but haven't gotten into detail is the imparting knowledge part, right? Because I talked about how I'm not a salesperson. So not only do I when I meet with these founders, do I tell them about the different funding options available and give them websites to go to and search for themselves and see if there's anything that pops up because there's thousands and thousands of funding options through the government, right? Canada is so broken as far as the government programs. I know over in Europe, there's some countries where it's just one, you apply to one board and it has all the programs under it for the whole country. But not only do I impart that knowledge, but I also impart my secret sauce because if they want to do it themselves, I want them to succeed regardless of them working with me. So I'll give them the strategies on the best chance of being successful when applying for grants. So and that's again just me trying to be helpful and not being greedy.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that because I jokingly say to my current boss, I'm trying to work myself out of a job. If you do your job well enough, people aren't going to need you. But oddly enough, that never happens because some people still want ease. And so the
Yeah.
people that want ease and build trust with you, those are the people that are going to want to work with you. Even though you've given the full recipe, they still say, "Do you know what, John? Make it for me.
Yes.
That'll be great."
Yeah, and I do have a few founders like that where they're like, they've been doing it themselves, and then they meet me, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, you just do it for me." And I love those because that just solidifies with me that I'm doing my job. I'm presenting myself well, and I'm meeting the right people.
And it speaks to, I think, both of the people you're attracting and who it is you are. As a founder, there's only so much you can do. So this is what you end up doing, or those founders that come to you and say, "Do you know what, John, do it for me." I think they also appreciate the work because they know how much time goes into it and how much energy it takes. And by having you at their side, they can refocus their energy onto the impact they want to make, onto whatever idea it is they're bringing to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially It's phenomenal. It's great hearing that they have that trust in me, especially like you said, them knowing how long it takes is the easiest sell for me because and even again, I'm not selling, but it's the easiest win because they know the value. And this is what I like about my business is that it's a success base. And so if it takes me 100 hours or it takes me 10 hours, it doesn't matter. It's success based. So I'm not working for a specific salary, I'm not working for a specific hourly rate. Sometimes I do hourly rates, but like I like it because it's about my expertise and what I bring to the table now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you win when they win. It's really a win-win situation.
It is, yeah. Sometimes it's
Excellent.
lose-lose. I got a probably 97% success rate, 96 maybe, but most of the time it's win-win and, it's always great to have those wins for sure.
But is it really a loss? I mean, at the same time, you're having good conversations, you're growing your network, you're meeting people, you're understanding where the market is going, what ideas are out there. And then those people as well, they can question their idea, their approach, where they are in life, whether they're ready for it or not, what they need to do to get there.
You're right. It's not a loss, and I'll tell you one that just triggered me. And not trigger in a way. I have a trigger memory where if you say a specific word or something specific, it'll remind me of something. So I had a client that we weren't successful in getting their grant, but they still referred me business. And so that's what I love is that kind of stuff. And those are the types of relationships I like is it's not a strict and professional relationship as you can probably tell by my personality. I am dumbing it down a little bit for this podcast, but I'm usually super energetic, super friendly, professional, a little jovial as well. And so those are the types of clients that I have. And so I feel like I've been able to establish a strong connection with them, which enables me to sometimes lose, but still win.
Could we say that that's some of the things that keep you in this line of work? Because it isn't easy. Like you said, there are losses. So, though we could deduce from a little bit of what you've said so far, that's what keeps you in this line of work. But what does? What keeps you going on the tough days when you just get rejection after rejection?
So before I answer that, I just want to say I think I'm still in this, and you may not like this answer because I'm comfortable with it, because it's easy. I do like it because I am talking a lot of tech, but I just had this thought as we were talking because you're talking about comfort in corporate, and I left corporate, and I am working on a couple other startups as well, but obviously this is my bread and butter, but, um the and to add so that's that, but to answer your question on the hard days, it's what pushes me is that it's my reputation on the line, and even though losses are expected, that's kind of why I'm able to keep going because I've been doing this for 16 years. I've lost sometimes in the corporate world, which didn't directly affect me, and I think that was able to help me, and, like, the company just kept going, right? Deloitte kept going, PwC kept going, so why can't
Mm.
I keep going? And I think that's what helps me to keep pushing forward is there's no difference. It's just now it's just me instead of this big corporate. And so I think also it's my clients' reactions. And that comes down to the relationship is like, oh, we didn't get it, but it's okay. And we kind of talk through it. We do a follow-up. Like we learn. We learn from what happened. So we reach out to the funding body. We try to find out why. Most of the time it's because they've just oversubscribed too many applications. And so
Mm.
it's not that we did something wrong, it's that there were other ones that maybe have a better connection with the funding body, or I don't know, but there's so many different factors that come into play. And so I think turning the loss into a learning opportunity and knowing that I can move forward, those are the two things that help me to move forward after loss, if that makes sense. Sorry, short
That's
story, long
excellent.
ADHD for you.
Yeah. And speaking about comfort, I don't think it's bad to stay in something or be in something if we're comfortable. It sounds like you found something that plays to your strengths, which is different than necessarily comfortable.
Well, you know what's funny though? Is the one course that I absolutely hated, completely hated, was technical writing in school. And that's what
Mm.
I'm doing now.
That's so funny. That's hilarious.
So,
The
yeah,
irony.
irony, I know. Yeah.
For entrepreneurs listening, who want access to grants, tax credits, or growth funding, what's one misconception they need to let go of and one thing they should do sooner than they think?
Good question. So misconception one is that for R&D tax credit, that I'll talk about that one specifically because the big misconception is that you need to have revenue, you need to be established. Sometimes they think, oh, it's only for the Googles and the big companies, but no, you can have one person on salary and all you have to do is have expenses. And you're like, well, how can you have expenses without revenue? And that's, well, if you're bootstrapping it, right? Because you're not showing revenue, but
Mm.
you're bootstrapping. So if you have Canadian expenses, you can go after it. The other thing is that they think that there's not funding for in their industry. And so what I tell them is that, well, don't think about it. Don't approach it from your industry. Approach it from a project perspective then. Like, what objectives do you want to achieve? And then look for funding for those objectives as opposed to funding for your specific sector, because there's a lot of specific sectors that don't have direct funding, but there's a lot of projects that could, like, you can, there's infrastructure projects, there's different things that you can go after. So take a look at it from a objective or project perspective as opposed to looking in your specific industry.
Could you bring that to life a little bit with a quick example?
Yeah. So um there isn't, so I just had a client, there isn't funding for um like to expand your brewery, for example. If you have a brewery, right, there's nothing like that, but there is a fund if you renovate a building. So if so
Mm.
other than the capital, so you can maybe get partially part of your project covered by buying a building or renovating a building, and you get that, but then you can expand into that. Or if you're in the med tech world and there isn't something specific for your um for your platform that you developed, but for example, you're traveling outside of Canada and you want to expand. Well, there's a grant for you to travel, cover those costs to expand and travel to other countries outside of Canada. It's called Can Export for those that want to look it up. And for the other one, it's called SWODF or EODF, which is Southwestern or Eastern Ontario Development Funds. There are those kinds of grants and funding out there that aren't specific to an industry, but are specific to a project.
That's excellent insight. I don't think without you, anyone would be able to figure that out, John.
You'd be surprised. There are a lot of people that can, but yeah, it's I lost my train of thought on that one. Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. It was just being able to have companies identify their different projects and associate them to the money that's available. And you do it as if you're a database encyclopedia with everything categorized by different drawers.
It's crazy how many grants that I can recall during a conversation if someone says the right word, like if they're specific project or something like that, like it can be like, oh yeah, there's this one that I haven't thought of in months, but because they said a triggering word, I can bring it up. So
Oh, it's
uh,
fantastic. I
yeah.
think that transitions a little bit into who do you do your best work with, and then what's the best way for listeners to connect with you and learn more?
So I do my best work asynchronously. So if clients and I go back and forth asynchronously, it allows me to ask specific questions, but it also allows them to give me more detailed answers. I know a lot of consultants like to schedule interviews, and I'm happy to do that with those. But I am the type of person where I'm going to do my research beforehand and I'm going to ask you really technical questions. I'm not going to ask you high level questions to get information out of you. So a lot of times even if we do have an interview, they have to go away and still kind of come up with some more technical details. So, but I do my best work, and this is with all my clients, with those that have their trust in me, and pretty much all of my clients have their trust in me. But the best way to reach out to me and to connect with me is on LinkedIn. That's probably your best bet.
Excellent. Is there any advice you could give someone who might be considering doing what you're doing?
Hmm.
Um,
Don't. No, just kidding. I'm sure everyone says that. So be sure that you're okay with hours of writing and rewriting. Um, and make sure that you're able to disseminate and translate information. And what I mean by that is, for each funding body, there are specific ways that you need to write for each program, especially Shred. And Shred, because you're writing for the CRA. So you know how lawyers have their own language? The
Mhm.
CRA pretty much has its own language. So not only do you have to write, but you have to be able to translate very technical information from a client in any industry, or you can, if you want to just start in your specific industry that you're an expert in, you have to translate that into CRA language, but also be able to explain it back to the client as to, okay, this is what you said, and this is what I wrote because this is what the CRA wants to hear. And it's the same for any funding body. So make sure that you're good with that you've got thick skin, because a lot of times you'll have clients that'll come back and just completely destroy what you've written and rewrite it because they don't understand that maybe it has to be written a certain way. But you can't take it personally. So be prepared to spend hours writing. And I wouldn't suggest using AI because they're not good at technical writing. Be sure you can write it yourself and be able to speak really well to the. You have to, if you're starting it on your own instead of working for a company, it's going to be very difficult. And I'm not trying to discourage, but you're going to get a lot of questions about what programs are available with very little information. So you're going to have to be prepared to speak to that. And you're going to have to answer a lot of technical questions because people in Canada are fairly well educated when it comes to government funding, specifically SHRED. It's a very saturated market. So you can't just fly by the seat of your pants and pretend like you know what you're talking about, because a lot of these founders know the reason why they're reaching out to someone like you or someone like me is because you should have more knowledge than what is available in the public domain, and you should be an expert. So just be prepared for that.
Excellent, excellent advice. It sounds like maybe one of the first steps for someone looking to go out on their own and do a little bit of what you're doing is to work with someone that's already in the industry,
Yeah, it is.
gain experience that way.
You can make the failures that way. They're not as impactful, especially if you're working for a smaller firm like BDO or MNP, which isn't as big as the big four, but or another boutique firm if you want. But yeah, I would suggest even a year or two at the very minimum. But honestly, I would say it took me 5 to 7 years before I could consider myself an expert in shred. So
That's really good insight.
yeah.
And if you could characterize what you'd like to see in Canada's innovation ecosystem, what would you like to see happen in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
I would love to see. So there's this Starter Company Plus program in Ontario that is actually for startups. It's $5,000 little grant. I would love to see a program expanded federally where founders who are less than 2 years old, who don't really have revenue, can access a grant or even a zero interest loan of $5,000, $10,000 for them as a kind of a pre-seed kind of non-dilutive investment from the government, showing that they support the innovation here in Canada. I think that that would really help. It would attract a lot of good candidates and keep them here in Canada, because we're losing them to the States right now. The other thing I'd love to see on the dilutive side is Canadian VCs taking more of a risk with companies like the US.
They're not really taking a big risk.
No, the funding has really taken a step back in the last year and year to 2 years. And I haven't seen it change yet, but hopefully 2026. Let's hope that this is the year for change. Definitely not for the government, so don't expect that program. But let's hope VCs start opening up their doors a little bit more.
We can keep hoping. Thank you, John, for your time. And if this conversation resonates, please subscribe to In It for the Honey, share it with a purpose-driven founder, and check out John's work in the show notes below. I'm Sarah Munoz. Keep doing it for the honey, and the rest always follows.